Good morning, everyone. This is basically what we're running as a Word of Faith Connect group here. The purpose of this is to give you an insight into how our Connect groups run for two reasons. Number one, we are wanting to encourage you to join a Connect group, because although it's great to listen on radio, it's more important to actually have people minister to you in person. And the second thing, and the second reason why we are doing this is because we want to encourage other churches who run small groups, Connect groups, whatever you want to call them, that they use our curriculum as well, because it's free and available on the internet on our website. Now, what I would like to do is encourage you to call Word of Faith Christian Center at 041 399 4400 so that you can join a Connect group. Now, we're going to continue with Matthew, and we're reading from Matthew 2, and we're reading from verse 1 to 6. Pastor Frederick, can you read that for us?
Okay, Matthew 2 from verse 1 to 6. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. About that time, some wise men from the eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. He called a meeting of the leading priests and teachers of the religious law and asked, "Where is the Messiah supposed to be born?" "In Bethlehem in Judea," they said, "for this is what the prophet wrote." Verse 6, "And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not least among the ruling cities of Judah, for a ruler will come from you who will be the shepherd of my people Israel."
Now, first of all, does anyone know who these wise men were?
It doesn't tell us, but they say they were from the east.
Now, I'm going to tell you something really interesting, and it seems to be historical, is that these guys came from Persia, and specifically, they came from. It says in Daniel that he set up a school of astrologers. Now, obviously, astrology isn't quite the same as what we have now in the pages of our newspaper, but these guys were actually people from a school that Daniel had set up. He knew of the prophecy about the star, and it's believed that he, in fact, had these gifts ready and waiting for the Messiah.
Is so interesting.
Because, of course, in Daniel 9, I think it is, I speak under correction there, in Jesus, Daniel received word from God that the Messiah was going to come, and they even had a time period. It speaks of 460 and then 489 years, I think it is. And so basically, what Daniel had is he had his school on permanent watch 400 odd years.
Oh my word! Wow.
That is amazing.
First time I heard that.
It speaks of such expectancy.
So they came expectant to see this Messiah.
Yes. And that's why they were looking out for him.
Yes. And it's also interesting to note that it wasn't just 3 men, it was 3 gifts. But
Yes.
it weren't just
Yeah, we
3
have to
men.
dispel that one.
Well,
According to all the Christmas plays, it's not just 3 men,
These
3
three
wise
kings.
I
men.
think there were
These
quite a
3,
big
there was
group.
a
Imagine, no wonder they were
let's
scared.
let's make people feel better. It could also have just been 3 wise men, because we don't know. It just says wise men from the east, and there's, as Madge has correctly pointed out, there's no total. Now, who did Satan raise up to destroy Jesus?
Well, Herod was the major one that was deeply disturbed. And when I read this, I thought to myself, why would you be so deeply disturbed by, by this? But we also realized that he was very threatened by his position, Herod as the king, and hearing that there was they They called for a king. They looked for where was this king to be born. I think he was worried about his lineage.
Yes,
and
his legacy.
His legacy, his children,
Yes.
and whatever it is. So he was going to destroy that legacy by all means.
But another really interesting fact is that Herod was an Edomite. Now, it's quite amazing to me that an Edomite would have been appointed as the ruler or king over Israel. Now, who here knows what an Edomite is?
Tell us, Richard.
A Edomite is
Esau?
is a descendant of
Esau.
Esau.
Esau, yes.
Yes, come on, guys.
And that
Okay.
Esau is the Jacob and Esau, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, the brothers.
Yes.
Now, what is the lineage of Jacob? It's the lineage of the
Messiah.
promise.
The promise.
Like
yeah.
we discussed 2 weeks ago.
Yes. So what was happening, and what was the lineage of Esau? What does Esau represent?
Well, Isaac was the promise. Esau was man-made, trying to make things
Flesh.
happen.
In
Exactly.
other words, flesh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because remember that God says that in the New Testament, I think it's in Hebrews, it says that God says, Esau I've hated, but
yeah.
Jacob I loved.
I loved, yeah.
So now, why?
Can I also, because
Yes.
Jacob ran after the blessing and Esau despised the blessing.
Exactly.
Esau didn't want the blessing. He sold it for lentil soup or
Yes.
something like that. Yeah, which was, so he didn't place a value on that blessing. And so that's why God, that's why God hated Esau, because he hated God. He hated the blessing that God was going to give him. Yes, ma'am.
Just an interesting thought here. Doesn't that say very much to us as Christians? So often we get back into law, and law is despising grace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in this case, it's actually really works. It's
Yes,
obviously,
exactly. No, I
you
agree.
know, because
It works. You're right.
because Esau was all about what he could do. He was a capable man.
Yeah.
So, Richard, this is then really a spiritual thing happening here, because
Yes.
here Herod, which then epitomizes Esau, or
Yes.
the hatred
Or
of the
represents.
blessing, represents
Yes.
Esau, which is the hatred of the blessing,
Yes.
Yes.
coming up against
Yes.
Jesus,
The
seed.
blessing itself.
the blessing itself, the promise. Yeah.
Yes. So this is a spiritual war that's gone on forever. Now I want
Wow.
to just take us back to Matthew 1 verse 2. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Now who was the oldest son? It was Esau.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
so what is this? This is a history of the blessing. And everywhere else it was the oldest
Very good.
son
Yes.
that carried the blessing and passed the blessing down. It was
Yeah.
always the firstborn, with one or two exceptions. But what was so interesting is that if you go to in Matthew 1 verse 2, the blessing came through Isaac.
Yes.
So what happens is when the blessing arrives, what happens? Esau, which represents the works, your own effort, your own abilities,
Flesh, yeah.
your basically pride,
Yeah.
Yeah.
comes to try and destroy the blessing.
Yeah, and also I heard a preacher speak about how the firstborn carries the blessing,
Yes.
but the secondborn carries the grace.
Yes.
If he
That's
was
awesome.
mentioning, he was
Yes.
mentioning about Jacob and Esau.
Yes.
Esau was the firstborn, Jacob the secondborn. Then he was talking about Jesus, how Jesus was the second Adam, and he carries
The grace.
He carries the grace of
Yes.
God.
So
beautiful.
if we go have a look at Esau, we see that one of the myths that has been perpetuated is that Isaac was a good cook. Sorry, not Isaac. Jacob was a good cook, and the thing
Make
is,
lentil soup.
yeah. But if you go and read it carefully, what it said was it was a boiling pot. In fact, the Bible speaks quite disparagingly of Jacob's cooking, and if
And he
you
was helped by his mom.
yes, his mother had to
Yeah,
cook for
exactly.
him, while Isaac, while
Esau.
Esau did everything himself.
yeah, and
I think so, yeah.
Isaac loved Esau's cooking.
Absolutely.
Yes, he did.
So if you look at it on the face of it, Esau was the outdoors man. He was the great hunter. He was the great farmer.
Could make a
And then
good
he was
point.
also the good cook.
He was the all-round
Yeah.
perfect son.
So Jacob, it says, hung about in the tent.
Mommy's boy.
He was a mommy's
Mommy's
boy,
boy.
and he wasn't even a good mommy's boy because he couldn't even cook properly. So on the face of it, he seemed useless.
Remember, his name means
The
usurper or
Yes.
supplant or
Yes.
crook, in other words.
So if you think about it, it's quite amazing to me that God would love Jacob and hate Esau, because let's be honest, Esau was the blessed one, or seemed to be the capable one, but Jacob had one saving grace, and that was that he pursued the blessing of
That's
God
correct.
above
Yeah.
everything else. And so the blessing of the Lord, the blessing of the Lord is what we need to chase. And here we see a conflict between the blessing of the Lord. The works want to kill the blessing of the Lord. Once again, because remember, Isaac tried to kill Jacob.
Yeah.
And Jacob fled because he was fearful that
Esau.
Esau
Yeah.
he was fearful of Esau, because the works always want to kill the blessing.
There we
Wow.
go.
That's
Yes.
powerful.
And here we see it again. We see Herod trying to kill, wanting to know, being incensed really by just the idea that there was going to be another king coming up, and he
Yes.
wanted to kill him.
So this wasn't a physical thing as much as it was a spiritual battle
Yeah.
between how you live your life. Now, why was Jesus born in Bethlehem?
Well, it was prophecy. It said he would be born in Bethlehem of Judea.
And then in John 6:35, we read about, let me just read verse 35.
Yeah.
Jesus replied, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry again. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. And we see and we know that Bethlehem means the house of bread.
Yes.
So
So
Bethlehem
the
was
perfect
chosen
place, for the bread
for
of
the
life.
bread of life to be
Yes,
born.
To be born.
isn't that beautiful?
In the house of bread. Nothing is random. I just
No,
love the
nothing
fact
is
about
random. Everything.
Now, obviously, why did Jesus have to be born in Bethlehem? Because he's going to sit on whose throne? On David's throne.
That's
Yes.
right.
And where did David come from? He came from Bethlehem.
Bethlehem.
Uh-huh.
So he was a descendant of David, and there's proof that God sticks to his word.
Exactly.
This is somewhere between 1,000 to 1,200 years later.
Wow, look at that.
Here it
The
is,
promise still stand.
and God is still busy working at his promise that he made to David. It shows that when God makes a promise, he sticks to it.
He does.
Amen.
He's faithful. He's a very, very faithful God.
Amen.
Now, there were lots and lots of prophecies about the Messiah, and everybody seemingly was looking forward to the Messiah. Now, why would the whole of Jerusalem be troubled by reports from the wise men that the Messiah was coming?
This was a big revelation to me, that they were troubled to hear that what they appeared to desire. Doesn't this go to the very kernel, the root of religion? We claim we love the Lord, but we don't really want the Lord around. We put on a facade of Christianity, and they didn't really. They were supposedly living for the Messiah above everything else. He's coming. And yet when they heard it, they were troubled. Because actually we don't want to have a king. We want to be the king of our own lives.
We just want to welcome Pastor Jimmy. He's been able to join us again. Now, if you think about what were they doing, they had a temple, they had all these priests, they had things and procedures that they would go through. They would have blood sacrifices. They had all kinds of things. Now, sure, if you think about it, surely everything they were doing was aimed for the Messiah.
Yeah. And yet when he's presented to them, the idea
That he
of
was
him,
coming.
He was coming, they
But the thing was, you see, these guys came and says, your king is being born. That's what troubled them. We live from childhood. Kids don't want to submit. Submission has to be thrashed into some people. And
Although if you think about it, they had a king, they had Herod.
That-
They wanted this
That's
ungodly.
correct. And he was of the
wicked
line
king.
of Esau.
They were troubled by the news of the king and the Messiah that they were waiting for such a long time, is that people have their own ideas of how they want things to happen. They were waiting for this king to come in and rescue them from the oppression of the Romans. And, they were waiting for this person, but yet the wise men are coming and speaking to them about a baby, about a new king that it was born. And so, which means, and also was thinking, when a king comes in with rules and regulations, and if you already have an idea of what you want, you're going to be resistant to a new king with new rules and new
Yes, absolutely.
regulations. So it was, again, I think it's a battle of flesh and spirit. This is what we want, this is the flesh and what our idea of how we want things. But yet God is saying, no, this is not my idea. This is your idea, but this is what God wants. So there's this battle inside of them.
And for people who have missed what we're actually talking about, because when I read, how many times haven't I read this passage of scripture? And I never saw that in verse 3 they say, and everyone in Jerusalem was.
Yes.
Troubled.
It was troubled. Yeah.
Yeah.
King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, and was everyone in Jerusalem.
About the Messiah that they've been praying
that
about.
they've been praying about
Waiting
here.
for.
Yes, waiting for, desperate
Yes.
for.
Yes.
There was the Bible records that there was a woman who was there day and night praying
Anna,
for the Messiah to
Prophetess
come.
Anna, if I'm not mistaken.
Can I put forward what I think the reason is why they were so troubled? I think that people like to go through motions. So they go through church and they've got a ceremony. But they've been, on the face of it, been waiting for the Messiah. But when it meant that it was going to become real.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
this is real. No.
This is real.
This is
He's
happening
here.
now.
Yeah, the rehearsal is over, because you must remember that they had been doing the Passover supper for over 1,000 years by
Yeah.
now.
Just-
So they had 1,000 practices for
There
the
we
coming
go.
of the Messiah,
Yeah.
and so when it's showtime.
Yes.
Yeah.
They didn't want to. They were resistant
ready.
to that
They weren't
idea.
ready.
Isn't this interesting?
Yeah.
We're saying that Jesus is coming again. Our Messiah is coming again.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the
Yes,
Bible
amen.
says he's coming for those who love his appearing.
Yes, that's a great
that's-
point.
And I wonder how many of us, if we had
Yes.
to say Jesus is coming today, would be excited about it.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
You know, one of the responses to a lot of the end time teaching is that people get troubled by it.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's exactly the same response. When we say Jesus is coming back, everyone gets troubled by it.
Absolutely.
But that's not the response that we should say. In fact, the Bible teaches that we should say,
We
that's
should
where
comfort, it says in Thessalonians we should comfort each other with these words.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. And Maranatha, come Lord
Come,
Jesus.
yeah,
That's what
yeah.
it's a Greek word.
We
Come.
should- isn't this also a fight between, or a challenge between a religious spirit and a
Yes.
spirit,
Yes,
Because
yes.
because imagine people, you're sitting in church, you have a religious facade, you come to church, you're good at whatever, but then if you have to forgive your fellow brother
Yeah.
for you don't, you have all
Yes.
the clothes, you have all the looks,
Yeah.
you lift up your hands.
Yes.
But when it's real, like you
Yes.
said earlier, when it becomes real, I have to forgive this lady
Yes.
now, the neighbor
Yes.
or the person that hurt me. Then you caught up
become
with this, and
resistant.
it's exactly the same like these people.
Yes.
So
I want to encourage you to look forward to the coming of Jesus.
Yes.
Now, and also I think that this outline teaches us that we mustn't just go through the motions. That going to church, going to Connect Group, should be real. We should meet Jesus there. I want to encourage you to join a Connect group. Word of Faith have Connect groups across our city. If you want to join a Connect group, you just need to contact us. It's important, if you serve Jesus, that you join a team. And so I know that this is just a taste of what happens in Connect group. This isn't a substitute for a Connect group. You need to be in a Connect group.
That's right.
Or you need to encourage your pastor to use the curriculum here. Any church can use our curriculum. Anyway, we want to bless you, and we will see you next week for the next episode in Matthew.
To get hold of our Connect outlines or for any further information, please contact our church office on 041 399 4400. That's 041 399 4400. Word of Faith Christian Centre, Port Elizabeth.